It was a typical sunny afternoon in the park, the kind where the air feels warm but not oppressive, and the sound of children's laughter fills the space. LeBron sat on a worn-out wooden bench, his sneakers scuffing the ground as he kicked his feet back and forth. At just 12 years old, he was small for his age, with a wiry frame and wide, eager eyes that always seemed to be searching for something. Something more than what his life had handed him so far. He wasn't sure what he was looking for. Maybe it was hope, or maybe just a chance to prove to himself that he could do something bigger than his circumstances. Raised by his grandmother in a small, cramped apartment in the heart of a struggling neighborhood, LeBron had never known the luxury of a big house or a warm meal on every plate. His father had left when he was very young, and his mother had passed away when he was just a toddler. His grandmother, though tough as nails, had always believed in him, pushing him to do well in school and dream of a future far beyond the rundown streets where he lived. But today, in the park, LeBron wasn't thinking about any of that. He was thinking about her. LeBron's eyes caught the sight of a girl sitting in a wheelchair just a few feet away. She was about his age, maybe a little younger, and had golden blonde hair that fell in soft waves around her shoulders. But what really drew his attention wasn't the girl's beauty or her soft, pale skin. It was the emptiness in her eyes, the distant look that made her seem as though she were a million miles away from everything happening around her. The way she stared ahead, as if waiting for something to change, but knowing deep down that it never would. She was alone, or at least appeared to be, as her caretaker stood a little farther off, talking on the phone. There was something about her that pulled LeBron in, something about the way she sat so still, like she had already given up on everything. LeBron stood up, brushing the dust off his jeans and taking a few tentative steps toward her. His heart beat faster, but it wasn't because he was nervous. He wasn't used to being nervous. It was because something deep inside of him felt like it was time to do something that could change everything. When he reached her, he stopped a few feet away, just far enough to not invade her space but close enough to get her attention. He hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should say something. She didn't look at him, but LeBron wasn't discouraged. His grandmother had always told him that sometimes, the smallest actions could make the biggest difference. He took a deep breath, then, almost without thinking, he spoke. "Excuse me, miss. I know this might sound strange," he began, his voice steady. "But I can make you walk again." The words came out so naturally, as if they had been waiting to escape him all his life. At first, the girl didn't respond, still staring ahead. LeBron felt a small knot of doubt twist in his stomach. He was only a kid. What could he possibly know about helping someone who couldn't walk? But then, her eyes flicked toward him, and she blinked in surprise. She looked him up and down, studying his worn clothes and his sneakers, but there was something in her gaze that wasn't quite disbelief, it was curiosity. "What did you say?" she asked softly, her voice delicate and unsure. LeBron could feel the weight of her gaze on him. He didn't back down. "I said I can make you walk again," he repeated, this time with more certainty. The girl frowned, looking at him as though he were some kind of strange creature who had just crawled out from under a rock. "Are you serious?" she asked, her tone shifting from curiosity to skepticism. LeBron nodded, not flinching under her gaze. He had no idea how he would do it, but somehow, he believed that he could. It wasn't just a random thought. It was something he had felt deep in his bones, something that he had been carrying around for as long as he could remember. "I am serious," he said, his voice gaining confidence. "I don't have a lot of fancy equipment or a degree or anything like that. But I've been reading, and I've been studying. I know what you're going through. And I believe I can help you." The girl blinked again, processing his words. She turned her head slightly, casting a quick glance at her caretaker, who was still absorbed in his phone call. Then, without saying anything more, she quietly wheeled herself backward, moving a few feet away from LeBron. For a moment, he thought she was going to tell him to go away. Maybe she would laugh at him, maybe she would think he was just a crazy kid making empty promises. But she didn't. She just sat there, watching him, as if waiting for him to prove something. LeBron stood still, his mind racing. He wasn't sure what to do next. He had told her he could help, but the truth was, he didn't even know how he could. He was just a kid, after all. But what he did know was this: he couldn't let this moment slip away. Not now. Not when he had a chance to do something real. Before he could say anything else, the man who had been standing nearby, her father, LeBron assumed, finally looked up from his phone. He was tall, well-dressed in a suit, with a look of quiet authority. His eyes immediately locked onto LeBron with an intensity that made the air around them seem to thicken. "What's going on here?" the man asked, his voice firm but not unfriendly. LeBron hesitated for only a split second before answering. "I told her I could help her walk again." The man's eyebrow arched, clearly intrigued. He took a step forward, his gaze never leaving LeBron's. "You're saying you can make my daughter walk?" he repeated, the words hanging in the air. LeBron nodded again, his chest tightening as he realized the gravity of what he had just said. "Yes, sir. I can," he replied, this time more confidently than before. The millionaire stared at him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to LeBron's surprise, the man didn't laugh. He didn't dismiss him either. Instead, he simply stood there, looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. "I don't know whether to laugh or believe you," he said slowly. "But tell you what. I'm listening." LeBron's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. "Can I show you?" LeBron asked, taking a small step closer. The man looked at him carefully, then nodded. "All right. Show me." LeBron didn't know exactly what he was about to do, but he felt something shift inside him. It was time to prove that even a poor boy like him had the power to change someone's life. As LeBron stepped forward, ready to begin the journey that would alter the course of his and Lily's future forever, the only thing he could think was, "I don't know how, but I will make this work." The millionaire turned to his daughter, his expression unreadable, and for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Let's see if he can," he said quietly. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? LeBron stood in front of Lily, his hands slightly trembling, his mind racing. The weight of what he had just promised hung heavy in the air. The words he had said, so easily spoken in the heat of the moment, now seemed almost too large to bear. But as he glanced over at Lily, her soft blonde hair tousled by the breeze, her face unreadable, yet hopeful, he couldn't help but feel a strange calm. This wasn't just some empty boast, he had meant it. He didn't know exactly how, but he was certain that he could help her walk again. He had to. But before he could take the next step, before he could even begin to explain the methods he had in mind, the man, the millionaire, Lily's father, took a few steps closer, his cold eyes fixed on LeBron with a piercing intensity. There was no sign of laughter, no dismissive wave. Just silence. LeBron had seen this look before. It wasn't unfamiliar. He had seen it on the faces of his teachers, his social workers, and even the people in his neighborhood who didn't think he would amount to much. It was the look of skepticism mixed with a strange kind of hope, the kind that was too afraid to fully trust but too curious to ignore. It was the look of a man who had money, power, and resources but had never quite figured out how to buy hope. "You're serious, aren't you?" the millionaire said finally, his voice steady but laced with disbelief. LeBron nodded, feeling the weight of the question press down on him. "Yes, sir. I am." There was a long pause as the man, whose name LeBron still didn't know, scrutinized him from head to toe. Then, without another word, he looked over at his daughter, who sat silently, watching them both with a mixture of uncertainty and curiosity. "I'm not sure what this is all about," the man said, his voice softer now, but I've been to the best hospitals, seen the best doctors, and tried every treatment available. My daughter, she's been through everything." He paused, his voice tightening with emotion. "And nothing's worked." LeBron felt a pang in his chest. He could hear the pain in the man's voice, the frustration and sorrow that came from watching someone you loved suffer, and knowing that you couldn't fix it. LeBron had seen that kind of helplessness before, in his grandmother's eyes when she had struggled with her illness, in his own reflection when he felt trapped in a life that seemed out of his control. But LeBron was different. He had always believed that, no matter how dire the circumstances, there was always a way. There had to be. "I'm not asking you to put your trust in me," LeBron said, his voice steady. "I'm asking for a chance to prove it to you." The millionaire looked at him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a deep sigh, he finally spoke. "All right," he said, his voice reluctantly yielding. "I'll give you that chance. But you'd better be prepared to show me something." LeBron nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't afford to back down now. This was his moment, the one he had dreamed of, the one that could change everything. "Thank you, sir," he said quietly. The man gave him a curt nod before turning back to Lily. "All right, sweetheart," he said gently, "let's see what this young man has to offer." Lily looked up at her father, then back at LeBron, her eyes filled with uncertainty but also a spark of hope. For the first time in a long time, LeBron saw something in her eyes that he hadn't seen before, a glimmer of belief. It was a small thing, almost unnoticeable, but it was enough to make him feel like he had been given a gift, one that he could never waste. As the man wheeled Lily forward and positioned her in front of LeBron, the weight of the moment settled on him. This wasn't just about helping a little girl walk again. This was about proving that even the most improbable dreams could come true. This was about proving that hope, even in the darkest of times, could light a path forward. LeBron's story wasn't one of privilege or wealth. He didn't come from a family of doctors, nor did he have access to state-of-the-art medical equipment or cutting-edge research. His story began in a small, overcrowded apartment in the heart of a struggling neighborhood. His mother, a kind-hearted woman who worked long hours as a nurse, had passed away when he was just a toddler, leaving him with only memories of her soothing voice and the warmth of her embrace. His father had never been a part of his life, and his grandmother, a tough and loving woman, had stepped in to raise him. Growing up in a rough part of the city, LeBron had learned early on that the world wasn't fair. The neighborhood was filled with broken homes, drugs, and crime. His friends didn't have much, and neither did he. But his grandmother, despite their circumstances, had always told him that it didn't matter where you came from. What mattered was where you were going. LeBron's dream of becoming a doctor had started when he was just 6 years old. He remembered the day his grandmother fell ill and had to be rushed to the hospital. The doctors were kind, efficient, and most of all, they had the power to heal. LeBron had watched them work, fascinated by the way they could take someone who was broken and help them become whole again. He didn't understand how they did it, but he knew one thing: he wanted to be one of them. But the reality of LeBron's situation was that a dream like his was a luxury. He didn't have the money for medical school, nor did he have any connections in the world of medicine. But none of that stopped him from pursuing his dream. He read books, watched videos online, and took any opportunity he could to learn. He was determined to find a way to make his dream a reality. LeBron had always believed in the power of self-education. He knew that while the world might tell him he was too poor, too young, or too unimportant to achieve his dreams, he wasn't going to let that stop him. He knew that if he could help just one person who needed help, he could prove that anything was possible. And now, standing in front of Lily, he realized that this was the moment he had been waiting for. It wasn't just about helping her walk again, it was about proving to himself that all the hours he had spent studying, all the sacrifices he had made, had been worth it. This was his chance to show that a dreamer from a broken neighborhood could do something that no one else believed was possible. LeBron took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the eyes on him. Lily's father stood silently off to the side, watching, waiting for something, anything, that could make him believe in the impossible. Lily sat still, her hands clutching the armrests of her wheelchair, her gaze locked on LeBron with a quiet, almost desperate hope. LeBron crouched down in front of her, looking directly into her eyes. "Lily," he said softly, "I know this might seem crazy. I know you've been through so much already, and I know you're probably thinking there's no way this is going to work. But I need you to trust me. Just for a little while." Lily didn't say anything at first. She just stared at him, unsure whether she was ready to take that leap of faith. LeBron continued, his voice steady and filled with quiet conviction. "You don't have to believe it yet. You don't even have to try. But if you let me, I'll do everything I can to help you stand again. I promise." For the first time, Lily's lips parted slightly, her eyes softening. She didn't answer with words, but the small nod she gave was all the affirmation LeBron needed. LeBron stood up, his heart racing. He wasn't sure how long this was going to take, or if it was even going to work. But he knew one thing for sure, he was going to give it everything he had. This was his chance to make a difference. And he wasn't going to waste it. The air in the park seemed to hold its breath as LeBron knelt down before Lily, his hands lightly touching the cold, metallic frame of her wheelchair. She sat in front of him, her hands still gripping the armrests tightly, as if her very life depended on that connection. The quiet hum of the park, the rustling of leaves in the trees, and the distant chatter of children faded into a blur as LeBron focused on her. He could feel the weight of the moment press against his chest. It wasn't just the pressure of her expectations or her father's curious gaze. It was the weight of his own promise, the promise he had made to her, to himself, and to the universe. "I can make her walk again." He had said those words with conviction, but now that he was standing here, with everything on the line, the enormity of his statement made him wonder how he was supposed to live up to it. But there was no time to doubt. He had already taken the first step. "Okay, Lily," LeBron said softly, looking into her eyes, trying to steady his own racing heart. "We're going to take it slow, all right? I'm not going to push you into anything you're not ready for. But you've got to let me guide you. I know you've been through a lot, but I believe this is possible. Do you trust me?" Lily looked at him for a long moment, her gaze distant. It was clear she had been through too many failed attempts, too many disappointments to believe in someone's words. She had spent her days in this wheelchair, confined by her body's limitations, while the world continued to move around her. But despite all that, something in LeBron's voice, something in his unwavering determination, stirred something inside her. Slowly, she nodded. LeBron took a deep breath. The plan he had in mind wasn't perfect, and it was nothing like what a real doctor would prescribe. But it was all he had. The books he'd read, the articles he'd studied, and the video tutorials he'd watched on body mechanics, rehabilitation, and neuroplasticity, they had all been pieces of a puzzle. He wasn't a certified therapist. He wasn't a medical expert. He was just a kid who refused to believe that impossible things couldn't happen. "I'm going to help you stand, Lily. But we need to build some strength in your legs first. I'm going to start by massaging them, get the blood flowing. We have to wake them up before we can do anything else." She didn't speak, but her eyes softened. Her fingers slowly relaxed their grip on the wheelchair armrests. LeBron moved to her side and gently touched her right leg, his fingers running along her calf and thigh. Her skin was soft but cold to the touch, a stark reminder of the paralysis that had rendered her body motionless. He could feel the tension in her muscles, the resistance in her limbs. He couldn't help but wonder if she had ever felt any sensation in those legs, or if they were forever lost to her. The thought lingered for a moment, but LeBron pushed it aside. He couldn't afford to get distracted. He needed to focus on her, on the task ahead. He began working his way down her legs, massaging gently at first, then gradually applying more pressure. He focused on her quadriceps, the muscles that, if they could be awakened, would play a key role in her recovery. His mind replayed the things he had learned about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself, to form new neural connections. He knew that every small action mattered. Every little push, every drop of sweat, was a step closer to a miracle. He worked in silence, his hands steady but his thoughts racing. Could this really work? Could a young boy, with nothing but his determination and knowledge, truly help someone walk again? There was so much doubt. So many unanswered questions. And yet, when he looked at Lily, when he saw the faint glimmer of hope in her eyes, he realized that hope was all either of them had left. After a few minutes, LeBron paused. He looked up at her. Her face had softened, her lips slightly parted. It was subtle, but LeBron could see it. She was relaxing, letting herself believe just a little bit. "How does that feel?" LeBron asked quietly. Lily blinked, her gaze drifting to her legs. For the first time in a long while, she seemed to be paying attention to them, as if she could feel them again, just a little bit. "It feels strange," she said after a moment, her voice tentative. "But in a good way." LeBron smiled. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It was the first sign that what he was doing might actually be working. "That's the first step," he said softly. "Now we're going to try something a little more challenging. Are you ready?" Lily hesitated, but only for a second. "I think so," she said. LeBron stood up and moved to the front of her wheelchair, facing her directly. He placed his hands on her shoulders, gently guiding her to lean forward just slightly. "All right," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm going to help you out of the chair. We'll take it slow. I'm not going to let you fall." Lily didn't say anything, but LeBron could feel her hold on the moment, the tension in her body as she prepared herself for something she hadn't done in a long time. LeBron reached down and took both of her hands. She looked at him, her expression a mixture of fear and hope. "I'll be right here," he said. "You can trust me." With that, he gently helped her to stand, placing his hands on her waist to steady her. At first, her body was rigid, her legs unresponsive, but LeBron kept his grip steady, supporting her as her feet slowly made contact with the ground. The feeling of her feet pressing against the earth, however briefly, was like a spark in his chest. "Take it slow, Lily," he said, his voice encouraging. "Don't rush. Just focus on your balance." Lily's legs trembled, but she stayed upright, holding herself with LeBron's help. The silence between them was thick with anticipation. She stood, slightly hunched, her body unsure, but there was something there, something that hadn't been there before. A small, fragile thread of connection between her mind and her legs. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. LeBron's heart was in his throat. Could this be it? Was this the breakthrough he had been hoping for? "I'm doing it," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. Her eyes were wide with disbelief as she looked down at her feet, as if trying to convince herself that they were actually standing. "You're doing it," LeBron said, his voice filled with awe. "You're standing, Lily." For the first time, Lily smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. And in that moment, LeBron knew that he had just made a difference. Maybe it was a small step, but it was a step forward. Lily wasn't just sitting in her wheelchair anymore. She was standing. And maybe, just maybe, she would walk again. But as LeBron steadied her, he knew that this was only the beginning. There would be setbacks, challenges, and doubts. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, he felt something he hadn't felt before, a flicker of certainty. He could do this. And this was only the start. LeBron stood with Lily, his hands still on her waist, supporting her fragile balance. Her legs trembled, the muscles unfamiliar with the task of standing. For a moment, everything was silent except for the sound of her shallow breaths and the rhythmic pulse of their hearts. The world around them, the park with its distant laughter and chirping birds, seemed far away as the two of them shared this fragile, precious moment. "You're doing it," LeBron said again, his voice almost a whisper. Lily's eyes were wide, her expression a mixture of disbelief and wonder. She was standing. She was really standing. But the weight of what had just happened settled heavily on LeBron's chest. His promise had been big, almost too big. "I can make her walk again." The words had come from his heart, but they were also a challenge he now had to meet, a mountain that seemed insurmountable just hours ago. As he steadied her, LeBron couldn't help but feel the magnitude of the journey ahead. He wasn't a doctor, not a trained therapist. He had no formal qualifications, just the knowledge he had absorbed from hours of studying, from watching YouTube videos, reading medical journals, and listening to the stories of others who had defied the odds. But standing there, with Lily's hand in his, the weight of his self-imposed responsibility felt like an anchor pulling him deeper into uncertainty. Could he really do this? Could a boy from a struggling neighborhood truly help a young girl from a wealthy family take the first steps toward walking again? It seemed impossible. Lily wavered slightly, her legs giving out for a brief second before she regained her balance, her grip tightening on LeBron's hands. "LeBron," she whispered, "I'm scared." His heart clenched at the vulnerability in her voice. She wasn't just scared of standing, she was scared of everything that had come before and everything that lay ahead. The pain, the failures, the constant reminder that her body didn't work the way it should. She was scared of hope because it had betrayed her so many times before. LeBron knelt in front of her, bringing their faces close. His eyes locked with hers, and he gave her a small, reassuring smile. "I know," he said softly. "But you don't have to be scared. We're in this together." Lily blinked, her eyes wet with unshed tears. She bit her lip, trying to hold it together, but the dam inside her had been building for years, and now it seemed ready to burst. "I've tried so many times, LeBron. Every doctor, every treatment, nothing works," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't want to get my hopes up again. I can't." LeBron's heart ached. He had heard stories of people like Lily, people who had suffered long enough that hope became a dangerous thing. But he couldn't let that fear stop her, not now, not when they were so close. "Lily," he said gently, "hope isn't about promises. It's about giving yourself the chance to believe that something better is possible. You don't have to believe in the outcome, not yet. But trust me when I say that every little step we take together is a step in the right direction. And that's all we can do." Lily swallowed hard, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She took a deep breath, as though summoning the courage to do something she had avoided for so long. "I'll try," she said quietly. "But I need you to promise me something." LeBron raised an eyebrow, curiosity and caution mixing in his expression. "What's that?" "Promise me that if this doesn't work, if I can't walk again, you won't stop trying," she said, her voice small but firm. "Promise me that you won't give up on me, even when it gets hard." LeBron's heart swelled at the strength in her words. She was scared, yes, but she was still willing to take that step, still willing to trust him even when her past had taught her to guard her heart. "I promise," he said with complete certainty. "I'm not going anywhere." Her lips curved into a small but genuine smile, and for the first time, she seemed to relax a little. The tension in her shoulders eased, and her grip on his hand softened, though she still needed his support. LeBron slowly, carefully, guided her back into the wheelchair. Her legs buckled slightly, but he was quick to catch her, making sure she was safely seated. The moment of standing, of defying gravity, had been brief but powerful. It had been enough to spark something inside her, something that had been dormant for far too long. As he wheeled her back toward the park bench, her father, who had been watching silently from a distance, approached them. His face was unreadable, but there was a spark of something in his eyes, something LeBron couldn't quite identify. Hope. Skepticism. Maybe both. Well, that was interesting, the millionaire said, his voice cool but not entirely dismissive. He gave Lily a brief glance before focusing on LeBron. You managed to get her on her feet. But that was just for a few seconds. You know as well as I do that standing is not the same as walking. LeBron nodded, undeterred by the man's coldness. I know. But standing is the first step. If we can get her to stand, we can get her to take steps. It might take time, but I believe it's possible. The millionaire crossed his arms, eyeing LeBron thoughtfully. I'll admit, I wasn't sure what to make of this when you first showed up. But I won't deny that you've done something today. You've given her hope, even if it's just a little. Lily's father paused, then added, hope is a dangerous thing. You're asking for a lot more than just a few minutes on her feet, LeBron. If you're going to do this, you'll need to do it right. LeBron took a deep breath, meeting the man's gaze. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I just need your trust, and your support. Together, we can make this happen. The millionaire was silent for a moment, his gaze flicking to Lily, then back to LeBron. Finally, he spoke, his tone softer than before. I don't trust easily, especially not someone like you, he said. But I see something in you. Something I can't quite explain. If you're serious about this, you'll need more than just words. You'll need resources. You'll need time. You'll need to prove that you can actually make a difference. LeBron's pulse quickened. This was the moment. The breakthrough he needed. This was the moment where it could all fall apart or it could all come together. I'll prove it, LeBron said firmly. I promise I'll prove it. Lily's father nodded slowly, as if weighing the promise. All right. You've got my attention, boy. Let's see if you can really do what you say you can. LeBron smiled, a small, determined smile. This wasn't just about helping Lily. It was about proving to the world, and to himself, that impossible things could happen. And he was ready for the challenge. As they made their way back to the car, the weight of his promise still lingered. There would be more obstacles, more doubts, more moments when it felt like giving up was the only option. But LeBron was ready. This was his chance. And he wasn't going to waste it. The next few days blurred into one continuous cycle of hope and fear, small victories and setbacks. LeBron could feel the weight of responsibility press against him with each passing moment, but there was no turning back now. He had made a promise to Lily, and he wasn't about to break it. Lily's father had agreed to support LeBron's efforts, though he made it clear that he would be watching closely. At first, LeBron thought the man would be nothing but a barrier, someone who viewed him as just a kid from the wrong side of town. But to his surprise, the millionaire didn't just sit on the sidelines. He arranged for the best physical therapists and trainers to work with LeBron and Lily. He even scheduled appointments with doctors who specialized in spinal injuries, making it clear that this wasn't just a wild idea anymore. LeBron was both overwhelmed and grateful. The resources that had been made available to him were beyond anything he had ever dreamed of. But with the resources came expectations. It's time to prove you can do this, the millionaire's words echoed in his mind, day and night. But for LeBron, the real work began with Lily. The mornings were always the hardest. After a night of restless sleep, Lily would sit at the edge of her bed, staring at her wheelchair like it was an anchor that held her in place. Every morning, the thought of facing the same struggle, the same limitations, seemed like a mountain too steep to climb. But every day, LeBron was there, ready to help her take that first step. Let's start with something simple, LeBron said, his voice calm and reassuring as he sat beside her. His hands were steady as he adjusted her position on the bed. Today, we're going to work on strengthening your legs a little more. One day at a time, Lily. That's all it takes. Lily's face was a mixture of uncertainty and quiet determination. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that something inside her could change. But after so many failed attempts in the past, trusting again felt like a fragile thing. LeBron, what if this doesn't work? She asked softly, her voice just above a whisper. What if I never walk again? LeBron met her gaze, his expression serious but full of warmth. You're going to walk again, Lily. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but I believe it's possible. You've got to trust me. And most importantly, you've got to trust yourself. Lily nodded slowly. She wanted to believe him. The idea of walking again, of feeling the ground beneath her feet, seemed like something out of a dream. But LeBron had ignited a spark inside her. And for the first time in years, that spark felt like it might turn into something real. Over the next few weeks, LeBron kept pushing Lily, slowly increasing the intensity of the exercises they did together. They worked on leg strengthening, balance, and stretching. At first, there were moments of frustration, when Lily's legs would give out, or she would get discouraged by the lack of progress. But each time, LeBron was there, lifting her up, reminding her of how far she had come. One afternoon, as they worked through a series of exercises in the park, Lily's face lit up as she managed to hold her balance for a few seconds longer than usual. I did it, she exclaimed, her voice full of excitement. LeBron, I actually did it. LeBron's heart swelled with pride. He stepped forward, lifting his hands to give her a congratulatory high five. That's it. You're getting stronger every day, Lily. You've got this. Lily's smile was wide, her cheeks flushed with excitement. It was the first real victory she had experienced in years. And it wasn't just about the physical progress. It was about the belief that it could happen, that change was possible. But it wasn't long before Lily's father appeared in the distance, walking toward them with a stern expression on his face. LeBron could feel his heart skip a beat. The millionaire had been watching from the sidelines, observing, but never quite offering his approval. Today, however, he seemed especially focused. You're making progress, the millionaire said as he reached them. I'll give you that. But don't get too comfortable. It's still a long road ahead. And I want results. LeBron swallowed, a sense of tension rising in his chest. I know, sir. We're taking it one day at a time. We're getting closer. The millionaire's eyes narrowed, studying LeBron with a gaze that felt almost clinical. You better be. I've got a lot of money invested in this. And more importantly, so does Lily. She's my daughter. If you're going to do this, you need to show me more than just baby steps. I want proof that you can actually make this happen. LeBron clenched his fists at his sides. He understood the pressure, but he refused to let it break him. He knew what he was doing, and he believed in Lily, more than anything, he believed in her strength. I'm doing everything I can, LeBron said, his voice steady despite the growing tension. And so is Lily. We're working hard, and she's making progress. I won't let you down. The millionaire said nothing at first, but the look in his eyes softened, if only for a moment. I hope for your sake, and for Lily's, that you can deliver. Don't waste our time. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving LeBron to process his words. Lily watched her father leave, her expression conflicted. He's tough, she said quietly. I don't think he believes in you. Or in me. LeBron's eyes softened as he looked at her. He's just scared, Lily. He wants to believe in you, but he's afraid of getting his hopes up. We just have to keep proving him wrong. One step at a time. Lily nodded, though she seemed uncertain. I want to believe in it, too. I want to believe that I can walk again. LeBron smiled. You will. We'll do this together. And when it's all said and done, you'll walk again. I know it. As the days passed, the weight of the promise LeBron had made hung over him more than ever. The millionaire's words were a constant reminder of how high the stakes were. He was no longer just a kid trying to help a friend, he was a young man tasked with achieving something that others thought impossible. But LeBron wasn't afraid of the challenge. He had made his promise to Lily, and he wasn't about to break it. One step at a time. The days blurred into one long, exhausting stretch. LeBron woke up each morning with the same sense of urgency, the weight of his promise pushing him forward. He was spending more time with Lily than anyone else, the two of them focused solely on her recovery. They trained, they stretched, and they fought for every tiny victory, no matter how small. Each day, it seemed like they made a little progress. Lily could hold her balance for a few seconds longer, her legs became a bit stronger, but it was never enough to quiet the doubts that lurked in the back of LeBron's mind. The tension in the air was palpable. Not just from Lily's father, but from everyone who had heard about their plan. The therapists, the doctors, they all looked at him with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. They didn't say it out loud, but LeBron could feel it. The question they all had on their minds was simple: can he really do this? Lily had been working harder than ever. She was pushing herself, sometimes to the point of exhaustion, but that didn't stop her. The dream of walking again was so close, so tantalizingly near, that it became an obsession. Every step, every moment spent in her therapy sessions, felt like a step closer to her goal. But then came the day when everything seemed to come crashing down. It started with a routine session in the park. LeBron had set up a series of exercises designed to build Lily's leg strength. They were working on squats, leg lifts, and even some light walking with a frame to help her keep her balance. The sun hung high in the sky, and everything seemed calm and normal. LeBron stood behind Lily, his hands on her waist, just like he had every other day, guiding her through the motions. She was steady, her posture strong, her focus unwavering. "All right, Lily, just a few more steps," LeBron encouraged. "You're doing amazing." Lily nodded, determination written all over her face. She was doing well. The feeling of control was starting to return to her body, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could do this. She pushed herself forward, taking one step, then another. But then, on her third step, her legs wobbled. The muscles in her left leg gave out for just a second, and in that split second, her balance was lost. LeBron rushed forward, his hands grabbing her shoulders to steady her, but it was too late. She stumbled, and then, with a cry of pain, collapsed onto the ground. The world around them seemed to stop. Lily's breath hitched as she sat on the grass, her face pale and grimacing with pain. LeBron quickly knelt beside her, his heart racing. "Lily? Lily, are you okay?" he asked, his voice filled with panic. She shook her head, her hands clutching her left leg, a sharp cry escaping her lips. The pain in her face was unmistakable, the frustration even more so. "I can't do it anymore, LeBron," she gasped between breaths. "I'm tired. I'm so tired." LeBron's heart broke as he looked at her. The girl who had been so strong, so determined, now seemed like a shell of the person she once was. "We'll get you up, Lily," he said softly, his voice steady despite the panic rising inside of him. "Just give me a second. I've got you." But as he tried to help her, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Is this what you call progress?" Lily's father's voice was cold and distant. He had been standing just behind them, watching the entire time. LeBron froze, his hand still on Lily's arm. The millionaire's eyes were narrowed, his face set in an expression of disappointment. "I thought we were past these little accidents, LeBron," he said, his voice thick with sarcasm. "This is the best you can do. She's back on the ground, right where we started." LeBron's stomach twisted. The words cut deep. He had been so focused on Lily's progress, on the little victories, that he hadn't prepared himself for this kind of setback. And now, the man who had offered him all the resources, the man who had put his faith in him, was doubting him. "I'm sorry," LeBron said, his voice tight, his hands trembling slightly. "I didn't mean for this to happen. We're making progress, just slow progress. It's not going to be perfect right away." Lily's father stepped forward, his eyes locking onto LeBron with an intensity that sent a chill through him. Slow progress. You promised me results. Not slow progress. Not setbacks. I've watched you fail time and time again. My daughter's life is in your hands, and this is what you deliver. LeBron's throat tightened, the weight of the man's anger pushing him down. It felt like the whole world was watching, waiting for him to crumble. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. He didn't know what to say. Lily, still sitting on the ground, looked at her father, her face pale with both pain and defeat. The tears she had been holding back finally spilled over, and she wiped them away, trying to hide her weakness from her father's critical gaze. You don't understand, she said softly, her voice breaking. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry, Dad. I can't. Her father's face softened for just a second, but then the hardness returned, his voice cold again. Enough. You're not giving up. You're going to keep pushing, whether you like it or not. And you, he turned his gaze to LeBron, are going to get her back on her feet. No more excuses. LeBron's chest tightened, but he managed to hold his ground. I'm not giving up. I'm not. But it's not going to happen overnight. It takes time. We've been making progress, and we'll keep making progress. The millionaire's eyes locked onto LeBron's. You'd better be right. Because if this doesn't work, I'm done. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving LeBron alone with Lily, the weight of his father's words heavy between them. Lily's hand shook as she reached for LeBron's. LeBron. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to mess up. LeBron squeezed her hand gently, his heart aching for her. No, Lily, it's not your fault. This isn't your burden to carry. Lily looked up at him, her eyes filled with fear and doubt. But what if I can't do it? What if I never walk again? LeBron took a deep breath, his voice steady as he looked into her eyes. We're not giving up, Lily. Not now, not ever. This is just a setback. We'll get back up, together. I won't let you quit. Not now, not ever. Lily nodded slowly, her resolve flickering back to life. But the road ahead was long, and the doubts were growing louder in her mind. Could they really make this dream a reality? LeBron didn't have the answer, but one thing was certain, he wasn't going to give up. Not on her. Not on himself. The tension that had hung in the air since Lily's setback only grew stronger over the following days. The millionaire's harsh words echoed in LeBron's mind like a constant drumbeat, reminding him of the high stakes of the promise he had made. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out, and that every failure, every stumble, might be the last straw. Lily, too, was struggling. She had always been tough, always pushed through pain with a smile, but now she was different. The pain in her leg wasn't just physical, it was emotional, too. With each failed attempt, the hope that had once flickered inside her seemed to grow dimmer. She wasn't the same bright, determined girl she had been before the accident. LeBron could see it in her eyes. Every time she tried to stand, every time her legs betrayed her, a little piece of her spirit seemed to break. It was as if the weight of her father's expectations, the pressure from the millionaire, was slowly crushing her. She needed more than just physical therapy now. She needed someone who believed in her even when she couldn't believe in herself. It was another grueling afternoon when the breaking point came. LeBron and Lily had been working on her balance exercises again. She was standing with the help of a walker, trying to take a few steps forward. Her legs trembled, and sweat beaded on her forehead. LeBron stood close behind her, ready to catch her if she fell. Just a few more steps, Lily. You're doing great. I'm right here, LeBron encouraged, his voice soft but firm. But Lily didn't respond. She just stood there, frozen. Her eyes were distant, her breath shallow. She wasn't focusing on the task in front of her. She was somewhere else, lost in her thoughts. Lily's legs began to wobble, and before LeBron could react, she collapsed to the ground again, her knees buckling under her. LeBron was by her side instantly, his hands on her shoulders, trying to steady her. "Lily. Are you okay?" Her head hung low, her face buried in her hands. She wasn't crying, but the silence between them was heavy, as if the world had paused, waiting for her to speak. "I can't do this," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm not strong enough. I'll never walk again, LeBron. No matter how hard I try." LeBron's heart broke as he knelt beside her. "Lily, don't say that. You are strong. You've come so far. You can do this. I believe in you." But her response was nothing more than a quiet shake of her head. She pulled her knees up to her chest, her body language a clear sign that she had given up. "I can't anymore," she repeated, her voice cracking. "I'm tired of trying and failing. I just want to be normal again. I don't want to keep going through this." LeBron sat down beside her, unsure of what to say next. He knew what she was feeling, he felt it too. He had watched her struggle, watched her fight, and now, watching her break like this, it was as if all the energy had drained from her. He wanted to tell her that everything would be okay, but that didn't feel like the right answer. He couldn't promise her something he wasn't sure he could deliver. Instead, he took a deep breath and looked at her with determination in his eyes. "You're right, Lily. You're not normal anymore. But that doesn't mean you're broken. That doesn't mean you can't be more than you were before. Every time you fall, you get back up. That's what makes you strong. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to keep going." Lily looked at him through tear-filled eyes, her face contorted in frustration. "What if I can't do it? What if I'm not strong enough? You don't understand. I'm not like you." LeBron's heart clenched. "Not like you." The word stung. He had spent his whole life trying to prove he was more than just the kid from the wrong side of town, the kid who didn't fit the mold. But he understood exactly what she meant. He could feel the deep chasm between them, the divide that separated their worlds. He wasn't born into a life of privilege like she had been. He didn't have a father who controlled everything from a position of wealth. He didn't have anyone telling him that he could make the impossible happen. His life had been shaped by struggle, by every obstacle life had thrown at him, and somehow, he had managed to keep pushing through. "I do understand, Lily," he said quietly, his voice softening. "I understand more than you think." He reached out, gently taking her hands in his. "I've been through a lot, just like you. I've fought for everything I have. I've lost things that I'll never get back. But I didn't stop. You have to keep fighting, no matter what. It's not about being strong all the time, it's about being strong enough to keep going when everything else tells you to quit." Lily was silent for a long moment, her gaze fixed on their hands. Her breath had steadied, but the sadness in her eyes remained. "What if I can't go on? What if I'm not strong enough to keep fighting?" LeBron shook his head. "You are strong enough. You just don't see it yet. You've got more fight in you than anyone I know. And I'll be right here beside you, every step of the way. I won't let you quit." Lily looked at him, her eyes full of vulnerability. She had always been the one who pushed forward, the one who didn't let anything stop her. But now, she was lost, unsure of how to find that strength again. For a long time, they sat in silence, the only sound the wind rustling through the trees. LeBron didn't push her to get back up. He didn't say anything more. He just sat there, waiting for her to find the strength inside herself again. And then, finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to try again, LeBron. I'm not giving up. But I need you to promise me something." LeBron looked at her, his heart pounding with a mix of relief and hope. "Anything. Promise me, that you won't give up on me, even when I want to." Promise me that you'll keep fighting for me. LeBron smiled softly, squeezing her hands gently. I promise, Lily. I won't give up. Not now, not ever. Lily took a deep breath, wiping her tears away. Slowly, she stood up with LeBron's help, her legs unsteady but determined. She wasn't back to where she had been before, but she was taking a step, a small step, but a step nonetheless. The road ahead would be long, and the journey would be filled with more setbacks, more pain, and more uncertainty. But in that moment, LeBron knew that they could do it. Together, they could push through. They could make the impossible happen. And that was enough to keep going. After Lily's emotional breakdown and LeBron's vow to never give up, things seemed to shift between them. It was as if, for the first time, they were truly in this fight together, not just as trainer and patient, but as two people who shared the weight of an impossible dream. The weight of responsibility, of her father's impossible expectations, and their own personal fears, hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. But, for now, they had a new sense of purpose. For days, the intensity of their therapy sessions increased. They pushed each other harder. LeBron, determined to prove to Lily's father, and to himself, that they could succeed, introduced new exercises, ramping up her strength training, her balance, and even her endurance. They worked until Lily's body trembled from exhaustion, and she often collapsed in a heap, covered in sweat, but each time, she pulled herself up, stubbornly refusing to quit. Her father's expectations were always a shadow looming over them. No matter how many small victories they celebrated, it was never enough. The millionaire's skepticism loomed large, often making comments that made LeBron feel as though he was walking a tightrope, one wrong move and it would all come crashing down. Yet, in a strange way, that pressure drove LeBron. He wasn't going to let Lily, or himself, fail. It was a Thursday afternoon when the storm hit. LeBron and Lily were in the small gym space that had become their sanctuary. They had just finished a set of walking drills, and Lily was exhausted but determined. Her legs felt heavy, but she was pushing through. LeBron's voice, calm but firm, guided her through each step, encouraging her every time she took another. Come on, Lily. Just a few more. You've got this, LeBron urged. But as she took the next step, her right leg buckled, and she collapsed onto the floor with a sharp gasp of pain. It wasn't the first time, but this time felt different. This time, the fall was harder. The pain radiated through her body like a shockwave. LeBron rushed to her side, panic rising in his chest as he knelt down beside her. Lily. Are you okay? Her face was pale, and tears pooled in her eyes as she gritted her teeth. It's my leg again, she whispered hoarsely. It feels like it's giving out. LeBron's stomach dropped. He had seen Lily in pain before, but this time it felt more serious. Okay, take deep breaths. Just breathe. I'm here, okay? You're going to be fine. But Lily wasn't looking at him. She was staring at her leg, her body shaking with frustration. It wasn't just the physical pain, it was the feeling of failure that cut deeper. The dream of walking again, the dream of standing on her own 2 feet, was slipping further away, like sand through her fingers. She closed her eyes and turned her face away from him. I'm done, LeBron. I can't do it anymore. LeBron felt a sting of panic. This wasn't just physical pain. This was emotional exhaustion. It wasn't just Lily's body that was breaking, it was her spirit. She had been through so much, and this setback had shattered the hope she had clung to for so long. No, Lily. Please. Don't say that. You're so much stronger than this. Lily shook her head, tears now streaming down her face. You don't get it. I want to walk so badly, but it's not working. My leg isn't getting better. Maybe I'm not meant to walk again. Maybe this is just how things are. LeBron's heart twisted in his chest. He could see the defeat in her eyes, the same look he had seen in his own reflection 1,000 times, the moment when it feels like there's no way out, no hope left to cling to. But this time, it was different. This time, it wasn't just his own fight. He couldn't let her give up. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder, and when she didn't push it away, he spoke softly but with the quiet strength he'd learned to carry in moments like this. "You're right about one thing. You've been through a lot. A lot of pain, a lot of heartache. But what you're saying isn't true. You're not broken. You're not destined to stay down forever." Lily turned her head to look at him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of doubt, but there was none. There was only certainty. "I don't know if I can make you walk again. I don't know if anyone can. But I can promise you this, if you don't give up, you'll find something even more powerful than walking: hope. Hope that no matter how hard things get, you can keep fighting. You can always keep fighting." Lily's lips trembled, and for a moment, LeBron thought she might break down entirely. But then, something shifted in her gaze. A flicker of the girl he had met weeks ago, the girl with fire in her eyes, appeared again. She wiped her tears away with the back of her hand and slowly nodded. "I want to keep going, LeBron. I'm not going to stop. Not yet." LeBron felt a surge of relief. It wasn't a victory, but it was a step in the right direction. She wasn't giving up. And neither was he. That night, after the therapy session, LeBron stayed late at the gym, working on new exercises for Lily. He was determined to find something, anything, that would help her make progress. He reviewed every video he could find on physical therapy for spinal injuries, consulting experts online, and even reaching out to a few he knew who worked in similar fields. But deep down, he knew that the key to Lily's recovery wasn't just physical. It was mental. And it was something neither of them could afford to lose. The millionaire remained aloof, as he always did. He showed up for meetings, made demands, and set impossible deadlines, but the further LeBron got into his work, the more he realized just how little help the man offered emotionally. His expectations were high, his patience non-existent. LeBron could feel the mounting pressure, the looming threat of failure with every passing day. But then, something unexpected happened. Lily came to the gym on her own the next day, a determination in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She approached LeBron quietly, and for the first time, she wasn't asking for reassurance or pushing away his help. She simply said, "Let's try something different today." LeBron looked at her, surprised, but smiled. "What do you have in mind?" Lily's smile was small but fierce. "Something new. Something that's mine." And just like that, a new chapter began. It wasn't going to be easy. It was never going to be easy. But they were going to do this together, one step at a time. The following weeks were a whirlwind. The small breakthrough from Lily, her determination to take control of her journey, shifted something inside both of them. LeBron, inspired by her resolve, began tailoring the exercises in a way that felt more personalized. They were no longer just a set of rigid tasks meant to achieve an end goal. Instead, each movement, each moment, felt like part of a much bigger story, a story that both of them were writing together. Lily, for the first time in a long while, felt the spark of hope that she thought had long gone out. It wasn't a giant leap forward, but the steady progress she was making, however small, gave her the strength to push on. And for LeBron, it was the confirmation that they were on the right track, even if it was just a flicker of progress in the midst of all the struggle. One late afternoon, after their usual therapy session, LeBron and Lily were sitting on the floor, stretching their muscles and talking in between breaths. The gym was quiet, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the faint sound of footsteps outside in the hallway. LeBron was tying his shoes when Lily broke the silence. "I want to show you something," she said, her voice full of quiet determination. There was a glimmer in her eyes that LeBron hadn't seen in days. He looked up from his shoes, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" I've been working on something on my own. I don't know if it will work, but I've been thinking about it a lot, Lily said, standing slowly, her hands resting on the back of a chair for support. The way she moved, so carefully, was different. There was more confidence in her step. LeBron watched her, his heart racing a little as she turned her back to him, focusing on the chair. What is it? Lily didn't respond right away. Instead, she took a deep breath and took a small step forward, away from the chair, moving a few feet on her own. It was shaky, her legs quivered under her weight, but she kept going, her body swaying slightly as she found her balance. LeBron's mouth went dry. This was different. This wasn't just another practice session. This was real. Lily was walking on her own. She made it 2 more steps before she stumbled, her body swaying, but she caught herself, righting herself before she fell. Her breath came in sharp bursts, but there was a look of pride on her face as she turned back to face him. I did it, Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. LeBron stood up immediately, his eyes wide with disbelief and awe. Lily, you did it. You took steps. She smiled, but it wasn't just any smile. It was a smile that radiated the kind of joy that only came from true achievement. From realizing that all the struggles, all the tears, all the pain hadn't been for nothing. I've been practicing in secret, she confessed, her voice full of excitement. Every night after our sessions, I've been trying to take steps, just a little at a time. I thought maybe if I did it enough, my body would remember how to move. I didn't want to tell you in case I failed, but I couldn't wait anymore. LeBron's heart swelled. He was speechless for a moment, just taking in what he had just witnessed. You're amazing, Lily. I knew you had it in you. I knew you could do it. This is just the beginning, you know that, right? Lily nodded, her eyes shining. It's not much yet, but it's something. It's everything, LeBron said, a grin spreading across his face. You've just proven that you're stronger than you think. And the best part? This is only the start. They both stood there for a moment, basking in the quiet triumph of the moment. It wasn't a victory in the traditional sense, not yet, at least, but it was a sign that something bigger was within reach. Lily had just done what so many had said was impossible. And LeBron had stood beside her every step of the way, reminding her of her strength when she couldn't see it. Over the next few weeks, their sessions became even more intense. Lily was hungry for progress, and LeBron was equally determined to keep pushing her, but now, there was a new energy in their work together. They had made it past the darkest part of the journey. The days when she had doubted herself and when LeBron had feared that they might lose everything. There was light now, however faint. Her father's influence loomed in the background, of course. No matter how many small victories Lily achieved, it was never enough for him. The millionaire's demands were always greater. LeBron could see the toll it was taking on Lily. Each conversation with her father felt like a new weight pressing down on her shoulders, even though she kept fighting. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Lily's father showed up at the gym. He had arrived unannounced, and the air immediately thickened with tension. Lily, he said, his voice cold, as he walked into the gym, his eyes scanning her with a calculating gaze. I'm not seeing the kind of progress I expected. I thought we were past these little stumbles. You've been at this for months now. We need results. And we need them soon. Lily, tired and frustrated, stood a little straighter, though her body still felt like lead. Dad, I am getting better. You just can't see it yet. Her father's eyes narrowed. I see what I see, Lily. You've been getting better for months now, and yet here we are, still unable to walk properly. You're wasting time. LeBron stepped forward, his voice firm as he looked at the millionaire. She's been making progress, sir. Real progress. I've seen it firsthand. The millionaire looked at LeBron with disdain. You may be satisfied with small victories, but I expect results. Your promise has been too slow, and my patience is wearing thin. Lily's face flushed with anger. I'm not a project. I'm your daughter. And I will walk again, but I need time. The millionaire paused for a moment, his face hardening, but then he turned and left without another word. LeBron watched him go, his anger simmering, but then he turned to Lily. Her face was pale, but there was fire in her eyes. She was done with being treated as a pawn in someone else's game. Are you okay? LeBron asked softly, his voice steady. Lily didn't answer immediately. She just took a long, deep breath and then finally spoke, her voice filled with quiet resolve. I'm going to show him. I'm going to prove to him that I can do this. Not for him. Not for anyone but me. LeBron smiled, proud of her strength. That's the Lily I know. Together, they turned back to the next exercise. One step at a time. The days following the confrontation with Lily's father weighed heavily on both of them. It wasn't just the tension of living under a microscope of impossible expectations, it was the realization that the pressure to succeed was now palpable. Every session felt like a test, and every step Lily took was a step closer to proving that she wasn't going to let her father's impatience break her resolve. It wasn't just her fight anymore. It was about her proving to herself that she could achieve what everyone else believed was impossible. LeBron, though exhausted from his own personal struggle with the relentless pace of training and his own mounting worries, never showed a hint of hesitation. He had become more than just her trainer. He was her partner in this fight, and that made all the difference. He no longer saw her as just a girl with an injury, but as a warrior in her own right, someone who, despite the odds, kept pushing forward. And every single step she took, no matter how small, felt like a personal victory for him too. It was a Wednesday when the true test came. Lily had been doing well, really well. She had mastered a series of balance drills that she had struggled with earlier, and her walking was starting to look more like normal strides, even though there was still a noticeable hesitation in her movements. She had become accustomed to those small bursts of hope, but today, something in the air felt different. LeBron arrived at the gym early, ready to push her to the next level. But when Lily arrived, she looked drained, her eyes were red, her posture slumped, and there was an unmistakable heaviness in the way she walked. It wasn't just physical exhaustion, though that was part of it, it was emotional fatigue, too. Hey, you okay? LeBron asked as she approached the training area. Lily looked up at him, offering a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Yeah, just, tired. LeBron gave her a searching look. He knew her too well by now. She didn't look, just tired, she looked like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. He set down the resistance bands he was holding and walked over to her. You sure? You don't seem like yourself. Lily paused for a moment, her gaze dropping to the floor. She took a deep breath, as if trying to hold back the weight of everything she had been bottling up. Finally, she looked up at him with a mix of defiance and vulnerability. I don't know if I can do this anymore, LeBron. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He had known that her father's demands were tough, but this felt like something else. She had never said those words before. What do you mean? You've been doing amazing. Look at how far you've come. LeBron said, trying to reach her, his voice full of concern. Lily shook her head, the tears starting to well up in her eyes. It's not enough. I'm never going to be good enough for him. No matter what I do, it won't be enough. And maybe I'll never walk again. Maybe I'm not meant to be that person. LeBron's heart ached as he saw the raw pain on her face. It was clear to him now that it wasn't just about her father's expectations anymore. It was about Lily doubting her own worth. No, that's not true, LeBron said, his voice firm but gentle. He reached out, putting a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to prove anything to him. And you sure as hell don't have to prove anything to anyone else. The only person you need to prove anything to is yourself. And from where I'm standing, you're already a champion. Lily's lips trembled as she bit back the sob that threatened to escape. But what if I fail? LeBron knelt down so they were eye level, offering her a soft, steady smile. Failure doesn't exist in this journey, Lily. There's no such thing. All that matters is what you're doing right now. Every step you take is proof that you're not giving up. And that's more than most people can say. Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, shaking her head slightly. It feels like I'm stuck in this never-ending cycle. I take a step forward, but then I stumble, and it all feels pointless. You're not stuck. You're evolving. You're growing. That's the whole point. We're in this for the long haul, remember? The road's never going to be easy, but you're on the right path, LeBron said, his voice full of conviction. The weight of those words seemed to settle on Lily, and she stood there, taking in the truth of it all. Her father's criticisms, her own doubts, they could all fade away if she just focused on what mattered most, her own growth. It wasn't about perfection. It was about the journey. It was about not letting the bumps along the way derail her belief in herself. After a long pause, Lily took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and finally nodded. Okay. Let's do this. LeBron smiled at her, pride swelling in his chest. That's what I like to hear. The next hour was intense. LeBron had planned an obstacle course for Lily, one that would challenge her coordination and balance, but also push her in new ways that made her test the limits of her abilities. The exercises pushed her to the edge of her endurance, but through it all, Lily held on. Every time she stumbled, she quickly recovered. Every time her body felt like it might give out, she found the strength to push forward. And then, it happened. In the middle of a walking drill, something shifted in her body, like a switch had flipped. Her legs, which had been weak and uncoordinated just weeks ago, now seemed to find a rhythm. Her pace quickened, and for the first time, she walked without hesitation, no wobbling, no stumbling. She was walking, and it felt effortless. Lily stopped dead in her tracks, breathless from the rush of adrenaline that had surged through her body. She looked at LeBron, her eyes wide with disbelief. Did you see that? LeBron, standing just a few feet away, grinned. I saw that. You were flying. Lily's face broke into a smile that radiated with a mix of joy and relief. She had done it. She had taken a giant step forward, and this time, it was different. This time, she knew she had it in her. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for a future she could finally believe in. But just as quickly as the moment arrived, it was over. Lily collapsed on the mat, breathless, her heart racing. She laughed nervously, her chest heaving with the effort it had taken to get that far. LeBron knelt beside her, offering her a hand to help her up. You did it, Lily. You're amazing. Lily took his hand and stood up with his help, a sense of triumph sweeping over her. I did it, didn't I? She whispered, her voice filled with awe. It was like she had crossed some invisible threshold that had once felt too far out of reach. But now it was hers to claim. But even in the face of her success, there was a new challenge waiting on the horizon. A storm that neither of them could foresee, a storm that would test not just Lily's resolve, but LeBron's loyalty and belief in what they were doing. The millionaire wasn't going to stop pushing for results. And his next demand would be the most dangerous yet. The relief from Lily's breakthrough didn't last long. In fact, it barely lasted the evening. Her father's demands, which had always hung over them like a dark cloud, now felt like a looming storm that was about to break. Despite her progress, it seemed that nothing was ever enough. She had finally walked, something no one thought possible, and yet, it was still met with harsh words and unyielding expectations. Lily's father arrived unannounced the next morning, as always, his crisp suit and cold demeanor contrasting sharply with the warmth that had begun to fill the gym. His gaze was piercing as he watched her, now sitting on the edge of the mat, stretching her legs and going through some basic exercises. "Lily," he said, his tone as controlled and sharp as ever, "we're beyond these small steps, don't you think?" LeBron, who had been monitoring her progress from a few feet away, stood up straight, ready to defend her. He could sense the tension building. The moment her father stepped in, the air always felt thick with pressure. But this time, it felt different, more suffocating. Lily, her face flushed with exhaustion, looked up at her father. "What do you mean, Dad?" The millionaire's expression was hard, his eyes calculating, as he gestured to her legs. "These small steps are nothing more than a distraction. We need results. I didn't bring you here just to watch you walk around in circles." Lily's jaw clenched as her father's words hit her like a physical blow. She had done everything she could. Everything she'd given had been met with more demands. She was tired. So tired. And his words, the way he belittled her progress, made it feel like she was nothing more than a project to him. "I'm not walking around in circles, Dad," Lily said quietly but firmly. "I'm making progress. Real progress. And I need you to see that." Her father sneered slightly, clearly unimpressed. "I'm not interested in baby steps, Lily. I need to know that you can perform. You owe me that much. If this is all you can do, then you'll never get the kind of life I've promised you. You'll never be great." The word stung. Great, it seemed like a distant dream. Not something she could see herself achieving with the weight of her father's unreachable standards pressing down on her. LeBron stepped forward, ready to say something, but Lily held up her hand, silencing him. She needed to handle this herself. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of frustration and determination, "I've been fighting for so long to get back to where I was. You don't understand what this is like for me. You only care about what's next, but I've been fighting just to take one more step." Her father's face grew darker, and his voice dropped in tone, now colder than ever. "You should have been able to do that months ago. You're not just fighting for a step, Lily, you're fighting for your life. If you think these small moments are going to cut it, then you're delusional." The word stung, but this time, Lily didn't break. She looked at him, eyes blazing with a new sense of resolve. "Maybe I'm not fighting for what you think I should be fighting for," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Maybe I'm fighting for myself." For a moment, there was silence, the tension thick in the air. Her father's face was unreadable, and Lily wasn't sure if he was about to lash out or retreat. But before the silence could stretch too long, he turned on his heel and walked out of the gym without another word, his footsteps echoing as he left. Lily collapsed onto the mat, her shoulders shaking with emotion. It wasn't relief, it was exhaustion, frustration, anger, all of it. LeBron, who had been watching silently, quickly walked over to her. "Lily, don't listen to him. You're doing more than enough." Lily buried her face in her hands, trying to calm the sobs that threatened to escape. "I'm not enough, LeBron. I'll never be enough for him. No matter what I do, I'll never be what he wants." LeBron knelt beside her, placing a hand on her back. "You don't have to be enough for him. You're enough for you. And that's what matters." Lily looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and pain. "What do I do? What do I do when he keeps pushing me like this?" LeBron hesitated for a moment, then spoke with quiet certainty. "You keep fighting. Not for him, but for yourself. You're doing something that no one thought you could do, and that's enough. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're not worthy of that." That afternoon, as the gym grew quiet, Lily couldn't shake the weight of her father's words. Despite what LeBron said, the truth was, her father's expectations felt like a storm she couldn't outrun. But there was something stirring within her, a sense of clarity, a realization that had been building over time. The more she thought about it, the more she understood, her father wasn't the one she needed to impress. His approval wasn't what she had to seek. It wasn't even about him anymore. It was about her. Her body, her determination, her will, those were the things that had gotten her this far. It was her spirit that had kept her going despite the odds. And it was her belief in herself that had brought her back from the brink of despair. Lily wiped her face, stood up slowly, and walked to the center of the gym, where the bright lights above illuminated her path. "I'm going to do this," she whispered to herself, a quiet resolve growing stronger with every word. "I'm going to do this for me." LeBron stood a few steps behind her, watching as she steadied herself. He didn't say anything, but there was a proud smile on his face. "Let's get to work," he said. The weeks that followed were grueling. Lily pushed herself harder than she ever had before. The pressure was immense, but each time she felt like giving up, there was a small voice in her head, reminding her that she wasn't doing this for her father, for anyone else. She was doing this for herself, for her future, for her own belief in her strength. There were moments of doubt, of course. Times when she wanted to quit. But LeBron was always there, encouraging her, reminding her of the progress she had made. And each day, Lily became more and more determined to show herself what she was capable of. But as she grew stronger, the challenges ahead grew more complicated. Her father, now more frustrated than ever, began to make even more unreasonable demands. He had always been the puppet master pulling the strings, but now, there was something darker about his expectations. LeBron knew that soon, they would be forced to confront the biggest challenge yet, one that would test Lily in ways she had never anticipated. But for now, they focused on what was in front of them, the path that Lily was carving out for herself, one small step at a time. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The air was thick with tension as Lily stepped onto the track for another session. It had been weeks since that intense conversation with her father, and though her body was getting stronger, her resolve was starting to fray. She had made remarkable progress, walking more confidently than ever before. But in the back of her mind, her father's words echoed, "You're not enough. You'll never be what I want." LeBron had been her anchor through all of it, pushing her to new heights and encouraging her when she thought she couldn't go any further. But even he couldn't escape the looming sense of impending pressure from Lily's father. The man's demands were no longer just about Lily's physical recovery, they had become about her future, about her legacy. To him, she was a project, a vessel for his vision of success. And if she didn't meet his expectations, he wouldn't just be disappointed. He would abandon her, as coldly and callously as he had so many others in his life. Lily stood on the edge of the track, her sneakers lined up against the cold, hard surface. Her breath came out in visible puffs, the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. She had fought so hard to get here, and yet every step forward felt like it came with the risk of losing everything. LeBron stood off to the side, watching her with that same intense, but understanding gaze that had become her lifeline. He could see the uncertainty in her eyes, and he knew what it was about, her father's latest ultimatum. "Ready for today?" LeBron asked, his voice casual but laced with concern. Lily forced a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah. Let's do it." But as she started to run the track, something in her broke. Her body was moving, her muscles working harder than they had in days, but her mind was a storm. The flashing images of her father's icy, demanding face, and the weight of his voice repeating over and over in her head, made her legs feel like lead. She faltered, stumbling a little, but quickly regained her balance. She kept going. But the inner turmoil was building, like a storm inside her chest. The more she ran, the more the pounding in her head grew. LeBron, noticing her struggles, ran up beside her. "Lily, what's going on?" he asked, matching her pace. "I'm fine," she replied quickly, though her breath was uneven, and she could feel her pulse racing. "Just need to push through this." "You're not fine." "I can see it," LeBron pressed, his voice softer now, understanding the signs of a breakdown. "Talk to me. What's going on?" Lily's chest tightened, and for a moment, she wanted to collapse into his arms and tell him everything, the pressure, the doubts, the fear that she would never be enough for her father. But she couldn't. Her pride, her fear of disappointing him, kept her from speaking the truth. She didn't want to be weak. She didn't want to be seen as anything other than the person she was fighting to become. "I can't let him down, LeBron," she finally whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't. I can't fail him." LeBron's expression softened, and he slowed his pace to match hers. "Lily, you're not failing anyone. You're fighting for yourself. This whole journey, everything you've done, it's for you. Not him. You've already made more progress than anyone thought possible." "I know," Lily said, shaking her head. "But that's not what he sees. He wants results. Real results. Not just me walking again, he wants me to be perfect." LeBron stepped in front of her, halting her movement. "You don't have to be perfect for him. You don't have to be perfect for anyone. You're already incredible. You've already come so far, Lily. Don't let him take that from you." Lily stood there for a long moment, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The anger and frustration welled up inside her, but there was something deeper, a realization that, despite everything, LeBron was right. She didn't have to prove anything to her father. She didn't owe him her soul. But that didn't mean she was free from the trap her father had laid for her. She had been living under the weight of his expectations for so long that the thought of letting go of that was terrifying. What would she be without him? Would she be able to survive without his approval? She shook her head again, as if trying to clear the thoughts from her mind. "I can't let him win. I can't be weak." LeBron smiled, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're not weak. You're human. And sometimes, that means asking for help. Sometimes, that means standing up for yourself, even when it's hard." Lily met his gaze, her heart pounding. "I don't know if I can do this without him, without his approval." "Lily," LeBron said firmly, his voice steady, "you're already doing it. You've been doing it all along. This is your fight. He doesn't get to define you. You get to define who you are. And I believe in you." Lily swallowed, her breath shaky as she tried to hold herself together. The storm inside her hadn't subsided, but there was a small flicker of something new, a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, LeBron was right. Maybe she didn't need her father's approval. Maybe she could be enough without him. That night, Lily lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Her father's voice, his cold and dismissive tone, still echoed in her head. But now, instead of crumbling under the weight of his expectations, she found herself standing taller, as if she had something she had been missing all along. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was learning how to fight for herself, and it felt empowering. But just as the relief began to wash over her, her phone buzzed. She grabbed it quickly, hoping it was a message from LeBron or someone else, anything to distract her from the looming reality. It wasn't a message from LeBron. It was from her father. The message was short and to the point. "Lily, I've made arrangements for your recovery. I've hired the best specialists. I want results. It's time for a change. No more excuses." Lily's heart sank. She felt the all-too-familiar pressure building up inside her chest, but this time, something was different. She had come too far to go back now. She had learned how to fight for herself, and no matter what her father said, she wasn't going to let him control her anymore. The storm inside her was still there, but now it felt like something else, a fire, one that was ready to burn away everything she had once thought was important. And for the first time in a long while, she made a decision. She was going to prove to herself that she could walk again, and this time, it was for her. The night after receiving her father's message, Lily couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in bed, her thoughts racing in every direction. The weight of his words felt like an anchor dragging her down, pulling her back into a world of control, perfection, and expectations. It wasn't just the physical strain of recovering from her accident that wore on her, it was the constant pressure to meet an ideal that was impossible to achieve. The fire inside her, the one LeBron had helped kindle, flickered in the face of this new assault. She felt torn between wanting to stand up for herself and the crushing fear of disappointing her father. He had invested so much in her, he believed that his success could be passed down to her, that she could become everything he dreamed of. But Lily wasn't sure if she could keep playing the part of someone she wasn't anymore. She wasn't just a project. She was a person, with hopes, fears, and a future of her own. She had spent years in his shadow, and now, as much as it terrified her, she was starting to see that maybe it was time to step out of it. The clock on her nightstand blinked 3:47 a.m. She had to get up. She couldn't lie there any longer, trying to ignore the storm brewing inside her. The decision was too important, and it could no longer wait. Lily slipped out of bed, moving quietly so as not to wake her mother. Her feet hit the cold floor, and she paused for a moment, taking in a breath. This was it. The moment she had been avoiding for months. The gym had always been her sanctuary, the place where she felt alive, where her progress didn't depend on someone else's opinion. The soft hum of the lights as they flickered to life echoed through the empty room as Lily entered. She was alone, as always at this hour. The sense of isolation was something she had grown used to, but tonight, the emptiness felt different. It felt like freedom. Her heart was pounding as she began to stretch, her mind now fully set on the course ahead. She had to make a decision, one that would change everything. Her father's demands were not just a part of her recovery anymore, they were controlling her life. It was time to take control back. LeBron would be there soon enough. But Lily needed to figure out where she stood before their paths collided again. She needed to know what she truly wanted. The next morning, the doorbell rang earlier than usual. Lily had spent the night running through every possibility in her mind, and now, she felt a strange calm settle over her. She knew what she had to do. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary. She couldn't keep running from the truth. She opened the door to find LeBron standing there, a wide smile on his face as he greeted her. But there was something in his eyes, a knowing look, as if he already sensed the tension that had built up overnight. "Morning, Lily. You ready for another day of progress?" he asked, his voice light but steady. Lily took a deep breath. This was it. She had to let him in, to share what she had been holding in all this time. He had been there for her every step of the way, now, she had to trust him with the hardest truth of all. "LeBron. I need to talk to you about something," she said, her voice more fragile than she wanted it to be. LeBron's smile faded, replaced by a serious look. "What's going on?" Lily motioned for him to follow her inside, to the small living room where she had sat countless times, thinking about the future. But today, everything felt different. This time, she wasn't thinking about pleasing anyone. She was thinking about what she needed to do for herself. She took a deep breath and began, "I've been thinking a lot lately about everything. About my dad, about recovery, and about what I'm really fighting for. And I don't think I can keep doing this under his terms anymore." LeBron raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? You've come so far, Lily. You've been pushing yourself harder than I've ever seen anyone push." "I know," Lily whispered. "But it's never going to be enough for him. No matter what I do, it's like I'm just a tool for his success. He doesn't see me. Not really. He only sees his vision of what I'm supposed to be." She paused, struggling to put her feelings into words. "I've been doing everything for him, LeBron. And I've lost myself in the process. I've been so focused on making him proud that I've forgotten what I want. What I need." LeBron remained silent for a long moment, absorbing her words. The weight of the situation was heavy, but he wasn't going to sugarcoat anything. He knew how difficult this was for her. "I don't want to live like that anymore," Lily continued, her voice stronger now. "I want to recover for myself. I want to walk again because I want to feel alive. I don't want to be stuck in a cycle of trying to meet his impossible standards. I don't even know if I can do it for him anymore. But I can do it for me." LeBron stepped closer, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "You've always been doing it for you, Lily. The whole time. You've pushed yourself every day, because you want to live your life. And that's why you'll succeed. Not because of him, but because of you." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words. To know that someone believed in her, not as an extension of someone else's dreams, but as her own person, capable of her own future. "Thank you," she whispered, almost too softly for him to hear. "I think I needed to hear that more than anything." LeBron smiled, the warmth of his presence wrapping around her like a safety net. "You've always been enough, Lily. You always have been." As the day wore on, the weight of her decision began to settle. Lily's heart still raced with uncertainty, but the small spark of freedom she had felt earlier continued to grow. She wasn't going to let her father's demands define her anymore. She was going to fight for herself. That afternoon, when her father called to check in on her progress, Lily made a decision. She couldn't continue to play the role he wanted her to. She would tell him the truth. The truth about how she felt, about her need for independence, and her desire to find her own path. "Dad," she said when she picked up the phone, her voice steady despite the nerves gnawing at her, "I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to be your perfect daughter or the image of success you've created in your mind. I'm going to recover for myself, and I'm going to live my life for me. If you can't accept that, then I don't know what to say." There was a long silence on the other end. Her father's voice came back, colder than ever. "Lily, you're making a mistake," he said, his tone icy. "You'll never be anything without me. You'll never be great." "I don't need to be great in your eyes, Dad," she replied, her voice firmer than she thought she could manage. "I just need to be great in my own." With that, she hung up the phone, feeling an unexpected sense of relief wash over her. Lily had taken the first step in reclaiming her life, and now, there was no going back. The days following Lily's confrontation with her father were like a fog. She couldn't quite place her emotions, as if she were caught in between two worlds, one that had been shaped by years of obedience and silence, and another that was still taking form, full of uncertainty and new possibilities. Her decision to walk away from her father's expectations had left her feeling both free and lost. Free because she had finally spoken her truth, but lost because she didn't know what to do with that freedom. She had spent so long living for others, measuring her worth by their standards, that now, standing on her own, the path forward felt unclear. LeBron had been her constant throughout all of this, steady and unflinching. But even he couldn't provide all the answers. She was alone in this, and for the first time, she wasn't sure if she could handle it. The morning sun streamed through her bedroom window, waking her from a restless sleep. The sheets were tangled around her, and the clock read 6:47 a.m. She was supposed to be at the gym in an hour for another session with LeBron. She had been avoiding the gym for the past few days, letting her doubts fester like an infection. Every time she thought about the next step, she was overwhelmed with fear. What if her progress wasn't enough? What if the world she was fighting to create for herself was nothing more than a dream, an illusion she couldn't hold on to? Lily had spent years working to regain control of her body, but now, it felt as if she was fighting for control over her own life, and it was harder than anything she had ever done before. She sat up slowly, staring out the window at the morning light. It was warm, inviting, but she felt cold. She could hear her father's voice echoing in her mind, telling her that she was making a mistake, that she was nothing without his approval. His words had a way of staying with her, lingering like a shadow no matter how hard she tried to shake them off. After a few minutes, Lily got out of bed, forcing herself to move, to take action. She had already made her decision. She wasn't going back. There was no room for self-doubt anymore. She headed for the shower, trying to clear her head, telling herself that she would push through it. She had to. When Lily arrived at the gym, LeBron was already there, setting up equipment for their session. He greeted her with a warm smile, but there was something in his eyes, a glimmer of understanding. He could tell that something had shifted in her since their last session. It wasn't just physical progress he was looking at anymore, it was something deeper. "Morning, Lily," he said, his voice as steady and reassuring as ever. "How are you feeling today?" Lily hesitated before answering, choosing her words carefully. I'm here. I'm still trying to figure things out, but I know I can't keep letting fear hold me back." LeBron nodded, gesturing toward the equipment. "You don't have to have it all figured out right now. All you have to do is show up, and we'll take it one step at a time." Her chest tightened at his words. He didn't ask for more than she could give. He was giving her the space to heal on her own terms, and that was something she hadn't realized she needed. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to feel something other than pressure. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay. Let's do it." The session started off slow, as LeBron guided her through various exercises, each one designed to help strengthen her legs, improve her balance, and, most importantly, rebuild her confidence. There was no rush, no sense of urgency. It wasn't about pushing her limits today. It was about feeling the ground beneath her feet again, about finding her rhythm and her trust in herself. As the hours passed, Lily began to feel a shift. Her body responded to the movements, and though there were moments of discomfort, there was also a sense of achievement. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't focused on impressing her father or meeting someone else's expectations. She was simply present in the moment, taking pride in every step, every push. By the end of the session, Lily was drenched in sweat, her muscles sore but strong. She couldn't help but smile as she sat down on the bench to catch her breath. "You did great today," LeBron said, sitting next to her. "I can see it. You're getting stronger every day, Lily." She nodded, still catching her breath. "I feel it too. It's just, there's still this part of me that's afraid. Afraid that I'll never be good enough." LeBron turned to her, his expression serious. "Lily, you're not trying to be good enough for anyone else anymore. You're trying to be the best version of yourself. And that's the only standard that matters." His words hit her like a wave, washing over her and leaving her with a sense of peace. She hadn't realized how much she had been chasing after approval from her father, from the people around her, from the world that demanded perfection. But now, all of that seemed so small. What really mattered was her own growth, her own journey. "I know," she said softly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I just have to remind myself of that every day." LeBron's gaze softened. "You don't have to remind yourself every day. You just have to keep going. Step by step. You've got this." As Lily left the gym later that afternoon, something had changed. It wasn't a grand revelation, but rather a quiet knowing deep inside her. She had finally begun to trust herself again. She was no longer just a reflection of someone else's dream. She was a person in her own right, someone with her own dreams, her own struggles, and her own path forward. But there was still the question of her father. She knew that cutting him out of her life entirely wasn't going to be easy. He had built his empire on control, and he wouldn't just let go of her without a fight. Lily couldn't predict how things would unfold between them, but for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever came next. She wasn't going to let fear or his expectations dictate her future. She was going to build her own future, one step at a time. Later that evening, as she sat down to a quiet dinner with her mother, the phone buzzed on the table. Lily glanced at it, her heart skipping a beat when she saw the name on the screen. It was her father. She hesitated before answering. This was the moment that had been building for weeks, the moment when everything she had been avoiding would come to the surface. "Hello," she answered, her voice steady, though her hands were shaking. "Lily," her father's voice came through, cold and authoritative as always. "We need to talk. About your recovery. About your future." Lily took a deep breath, ready for the storm that was coming. "Dad," she said, her voice firm, "I've already made my decision. I'm not going to be what you want me to be anymore. I'm going to do this for me. I'll recover on my own terms. If you can't accept that, then we need to talk about where we go from here." There was a long pause on the other end. When he finally spoke, it wasn't with anger, but with something far more chilling. "Lily," he said, his voice soft but firm, "you have no idea what you're getting yourself into." Lily held her ground. "Maybe I don't. But I'm ready to find out." And with that, she hung up the phone, leaving the past behind her. Lily's world had shifted in ways she hadn't anticipated. She had freed herself from the weight of her father's expectations, but as much as she wanted to believe that this new freedom would feel like pure liberation, it didn't. Her father's last words echoed in her mind, "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into." The uncertainty in his tone had left her shaken, though she hadn't let it show. For the first time, she felt as though she were standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out into the vast unknown. She was taking a leap, but she wasn't entirely sure what waited at the bottom. The next few days were a blur of physical therapy and quiet reflection. LeBron continued to be a steady force in her life, but even his encouragement couldn't fully quell the storm raging inside her. Recovery was tough, and there were moments when she wanted to give up and return to the familiar comfort of her father's control, where she didn't have to make tough choices or bear the weight of an uncertain future. But LeBron kept pushing her forward. He had a way of reading her, of knowing when she was ready to give up, and always managed to say just the right thing to pull her back. He didn't know all the details of her life, but he could see her struggle, and that was enough for him to stand by her. It was during one of their late afternoon sessions that Lily's phone rang again. She glanced at the caller ID. Her father. This time, there was no hesitation as she swiped to answer. "Lily," her father's voice came through, colder than ever, "we need to talk. Now." Lily's heart raced. There was something about his tone that felt different. It wasn't just a matter of him demanding something from her, it was as though he knew something she didn't. She felt a pang of unease in her chest. "I'm busy," she replied, her voice steady despite the rising panic. "I'm working on my recovery, and I don't have time for another lecture." There was a brief silence, then her father spoke, his voice now carrying a trace of something almost menacing. "I'm not calling to lecture you, Lily. I'm calling to give you a chance to fix this before it's too late." Her grip tightened on the phone. "Fix what?" "Your future," he answered sharply. "You don't understand the implications of your actions. You think you're rebelling against me, but what you're really doing is throwing away everything I've built for you. I've already arranged things with the top specialists in the field. If you want to walk again, you need to do things my way." Lily felt the old pressure building, but this time, she refused to let it break her. "No, Dad," she said firmly. "I'm doing this for me. Not for you, not for anyone else. I'll make my own way, and if you can't accept that, then there's nothing more to say." Her father's tone hardened. "Then you're making the biggest mistake of your life." She hung up before he could say anything more. The phone felt heavy in her hand as she stared at it for a moment. This wasn't the end of the battle, she knew that. But it was a victory in its own way, one small moment where she had stood up for herself. The next few days passed in a blur. Lily threw herself into her recovery with everything she had, her physical therapy sessions growing longer and more intense. But as much as she pushed her body, her mind remained restless, haunted by the conversation with her father. Her world was no longer just about getting her legs back, it was about rebuilding her sense of self, piece by piece. And with every step forward in her physical journey, she found herself slowly coming to terms with the emotional journey ahead. But what would it look like when the past came knocking again? She couldn't shake the feeling that her father's influence still loomed large. LeBron seemed to sense her inner turmoil. After one of their more grueling sessions, when she could hardly stand up straight, he sat her down on the bench and, as usual, offered her a word of encouragement. "You're doing amazing, Lily," he said softly, his voice reassuring, but there was something different in the way he looked at her this time. He wasn't just talking about her physical progress. He was talking about the fight inside her, the battle to regain control over her life. "I can see it in your eyes. You're getting stronger, not just in your body, but in your mind. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Lily smiled at him, though the words didn't come easily. "I know. It's just hard, you know. I thought once I made the decision to do things my way, everything would just fall into place. But it feels like I'm constantly fighting, and I don't know if I can keep doing it." LeBron nodded. "That's how it is when you make real changes in your life. It's not just about what you do physically. It's about everything that comes with it, the emotions, the doubts, the fear. But you have something a lot of people don't have, you have the courage to face it head-on." Lily's heart swelled with gratitude. LeBron wasn't just her trainer, he was becoming her anchor, the one person who truly understood her struggle. "I don't know what's going to happen next," she said, her voice trembling. "But I do know one thing, I'm not going to go back. No matter what." Later that afternoon, as Lily rested at home, her phone buzzed once again. This time, it wasn't her father. It was an unfamiliar number. Curiosity tugged at her, but she picked it up anyway. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Lily?" A voice she didn't recognize said. "This is Grace Thompson, from the law offices of Thompson and Morgan. I'm calling about an urgent matter regarding your father." Lily's heart skipped a beat. "What's this about?" "Your father has made some arrangements, including legal documents that pertain to your health and recovery," Grace continued. "I suggest you come in to discuss them. It's important." Lily sat up, the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. She hadn't expected this. Had her father been preparing for this moment, anticipating that she would push back? Or was this something else entirely? "I don't understand," Lily said, her voice shaking. "What do you mean, arrangements?" "Come to the office," Grace insisted. "It's better if we talk in person." Lily felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of arrangements had her father made? She had always known that his control over her life went far deeper than she could have imagined, but this? This felt like something else entirely. She glanced at the clock. It was nearing the end of the day, but she knew what she had to do. She couldn't keep running from the reality that her father's influence still ran deep. If she was going to take control of her life, she had to confront this head-on. She stood up, taking a deep breath. The next chapter of her journey was about to unfold, and it was far more complicated than she could have ever imagined. The drive to Thompson and Morgan's office felt longer than it should have. Every turn, every stoplight, seemed to stretch out the seconds, filling Lily with a sense of dread she couldn't shake. Her mind raced with questions. What kind of arrangements had her father made? Why hadn't he told her about them? And, most chilling of all, why had he gone through legal channels if he didn't plan to control her again? She pulled into the parking lot, the building looming in front of her like an imposing fortress. As she stepped out of the car, her legs wobbled slightly, something she had grown used to after months of rehabilitation. But today, it felt different. She was about to confront something far more dangerous than her physical limitations. This was a battle for her future, her independence, her very identity. Inside the sleek, polished lobby, the receptionist greeted her with a practiced smile. "Ms. Roberts, we've been expecting you. Please, take a seat. Ms. Thompson will be with you shortly." Lily nodded and sank into the leather chair, trying to calm her racing thoughts. The room was quiet, almost too quiet, with only the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the rustle of papers. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if it knew she wasn't just there for legal documents. This was about something much deeper, about the power her father had over her, even when she thought she had escaped it. A few minutes later, a woman in her early 40s appeared, wearing a sharp, tailored suit. Her dark hair was pulled back into a no-nonsense bun, and her face held the kind of professionalism that could have easily passed for coldness. She extended her hand, and Lily took it, unsure of what to expect. "Ms. Roberts, thank you for coming in. I'm Grace Thompson." "Please, follow me," Grace said in a tone that left no room for argument. Lily followed her through a maze of hallways, her footsteps echoing on the polished marble floors. She was led into a spacious conference room with a long, wooden table. There were no windows, and the walls were lined with bookshelves filled with legal texts. The only light came from an overhead chandelier, casting the room in a sterile glow. Grace took a seat across from Lily, placing a file folder on the table between them. It looked thick, filled with papers that made Lily's stomach churn. "Before we begin, I need to make one thing clear," Grace said, her voice measured and calm. "Your father is a very powerful man, Ms. Roberts. And he cares deeply about your future. His plans for your recovery and life moving forward are not to be taken lightly." Lily's heart skipped. "What kind of plans are we talking about?" Grace opened the folder and pushed it toward Lily. "This is a series of legal documents regarding your health care, your financial future, and the management of your assets. Your father has put everything in place to ensure that you have access to the best medical care and therapy available. He's arranged for specialists, top-tier treatment, and a team that will be dedicated to your recovery. He's even taken steps to ensure that all expenses are covered, with no financial burden on you." Lily stared at the documents, her breath catching in her throat. "Wait, you mean he's paying for all of this? The specialists? The therapy?" "Yes," Grace confirmed, her voice unwavering. "Your father believes that the only way for you to fully recover is under his direct oversight. He has the resources to make sure that happens, and he's committed to seeing it through." Lily felt a wave of anger rush through her. She had been fighting so hard to take control of her own life, and here her father was, using his wealth and influence to try and drag her back into his orbit. "No," she said, her voice rising. "I don't want his money. I don't want his control. I've been doing this on my own. I've been fighting for myself, and I'm not going to let him make me his project again." Grace's expression softened, but only slightly. "I understand that this may seem overwhelming. Your father is very focused on your well-being, Lily. He believes that the only way for you to recover is through his plan. But he has made it clear that he expects you to follow through with this agreement." Lily's mind spun. She could feel the walls closing in on her, the suffocating pressure of her father's influence, even from a distance. This wasn't just about physical recovery anymore, it was about her freedom, her autonomy. She didn't want to be tethered to him forever. She wanted to carve her own path, no matter how difficult it might be. "You don't understand," Lily said, her voice trembling with a mixture of frustration and defiance. "I've spent my whole life living under his shadow. I've been told what to do, how to do it, when to do it. I can't keep doing that. I have to do this for me, on my own terms." Grace seemed to consider this for a moment, then leaned back in her chair. "I see. But you must understand, Ms. Roberts, that this is not something you can simply walk away from. Your father has taken great lengths to ensure your future. If you decide to reject this offer, there will be consequences." Lily's heart dropped. "Consequences? What are you talking about?" Grace's eyes darkened slightly. "Your father has full legal control over your medical and financial affairs. He's also set up a trust, with specific conditions tied to your recovery. If you choose to go against his plan, you'll forfeit access to those resources. You'll be on your own. Lily's mind raced. She knew her father had a hold on her, but this was something else entirely. Her recovery, her future, was now being used as leverage. All the work she had done to reclaim her independence seemed to be at risk. But something inside her snapped. She was tired of being manipulated, tired of the constant fear that her father would always find a way to control her life. "I don't care," Lily said, her voice firm. "I won't be a pawn in his game anymore. I've made it this far on my own, and I'll keep going, with or without his money, with or without his plan. I am not a project. I'm a person." Grace looked at her for a long moment, as if measuring the sincerity of her words. Finally, she nodded. "I see. Well, Ms. Roberts, I can't force you to accept your father's arrangement. But you should understand that rejecting his offer means you'll be going down a much more difficult road. I hope you're prepared for that." Lily stood up, her legs feeling stronger than they had in weeks, the anger and determination fueling her like never before. She didn't need her father's approval. She didn't need his plan. She only needed herself, and maybe, just maybe, the people who truly cared about her. "I am," she said, looking Grace directly in the eyes. "I'm ready." As she left the office, the weight of the decision settled over her. She had rejected her father's offer. The road ahead would be harder, but it was hers to walk. She wasn't going to let anyone dictate her future, not even the man who had given her life. And when she saw LeBron later that day, she knew what she had to do. She had to keep going. She had to fight for herself, no matter what. Her journey was far from over. The drive home was slow, almost torturously so. Lily's thoughts swirled in a chaotic mess of conflicting emotions. There was a sense of relief that flooded through her, but underneath it was an ever-present knot of uncertainty. She had taken a massive step, rejecting her father's offer and choosing her own path, but now, as the world around her settled back into quiet, she couldn't help but wonder what that choice truly meant. She had stood up for herself, she knew that. But standing up for yourself didn't always come with an easy road, and she was acutely aware that the hardest part of this journey was still ahead of her. When Lily arrived home, she found the house empty. Her mother's car wasn't in the driveway, and her father was unreachable. It was strange, the stillness of it all. She had spent so many years fighting for a semblance of peace in this house, only to find that peace had always been elusive. It had been buried beneath layers of control, of expectations that she didn't even fully realize were suffocating her until now. She walked through the front door and into the living room, her footsteps echoing in the quiet. The house felt different without her father's presence looming over her, and it felt even stranger without her mother there to balance out the silence. Lily dropped her bag onto the couch and let herself collapse beside it. She stared at the empty space in front of her, still processing everything that had transpired. Grace's words replayed in her mind, "You'll forfeit access to those resources. You'll be on your own." A chill ran down her spine. She knew her father wouldn't take her decision lightly. He wasn't the type of man who gave up control easily. But that was the price of freedom, wasn't it? Lily let out a sigh and ran a hand through her hair. She had made her choice, but the consequences of it were still unclear. For the first time in years, she wasn't sure what her next step was going to be. What did it look like to walk away from everything she had known, everything that had been given to her? The next day, she found herself back at the rehab center. LeBron was there, as always, encouraging her and pushing her to take the next step in her recovery. But even his steady presence couldn't keep the anxiety from creeping in. She was still thinking about her father, about the decisions he would make now that she had rejected his plans. And more than anything, she was worried about how this would all affect her future. LeBron noticed the tension in her, even though she tried to hide it. "You're doing great, Lily," he said, watching as she carefully maneuvered herself on the treadmill, the physical strain obvious in her movement. "You're stronger than you think. I don't feel strong, she admitted, pausing for a moment. She had been pushing herself harder than ever, but there were still days when it felt like nothing was working, like nothing was ever going to get better. LeBron tilted his head, a knowing look in his eyes. It's okay to feel unsure sometimes. This journey, it's not just about your body, it's about your mind. You're fighting more than just your legs, you're fighting to reclaim everything that's been taken from you. And that's not easy. Lily met his gaze, grateful for his honesty. I don't know if I can do it, she said quietly. I've been given so much, resources, money, support. And now, it's all gone. I'm on my own. You're not alone, LeBron said, his voice steady. You've got me. And you've got yourself. And that's more than enough. You've already proven that you're capable of overcoming anything. Lily took a deep breath, absorbing his words. She wasn't alone, not entirely. She had LeBron, who had become more than just her trainer, he had become a friend, a confidant, someone who truly understood her struggle. And in a way, that was all she needed. I guess I've always had people telling me what to do, she said, her voice thoughtful. But I've never really learned to trust myself. I've always relied on what others gave me, thinking it was the only way. But now I don't know if I can make it without that safety net. LeBron smiled, his eyes kind. You don't need the safety net anymore, Lily. You've learned to fly. You just don't know it yet. Her heart skipped at his words. Maybe, just maybe, she could learn to trust herself. She had already come so far, fought so hard to regain her independence. The road ahead was still long, and it would be filled with challenges, but for the first time in a long time, Lily felt a flicker of hope. Later that afternoon, Lily sat down at the kitchen table, a cup of tea warming her hands. Her mother still wasn't home, and there was a strange emptiness to the house now. But as she stared out the window, she realized that this was her moment. This was her chance to decide who she wanted to be, outside of her father's shadow, outside of the expectations he had placed on her. It wasn't just about walking again anymore. It was about living again, fully and authentically. She had made a choice, and now, she would have to live with it. But as she sat there, contemplating her next move, she realized that the choice didn't have to be a burden. It was a gift. A chance to carve out her own path, to determine her own future, on her own terms. That night, Lily received a text message from her father. The message was brief, almost cold in its simplicity: we need to talk. I expect you at the office tomorrow at 10 a.m. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Lily's heart raced as she read the message. She had expected this. Her father was never one to let things go. But now, she wasn't the same person who had once cowered under his control. She was stronger, more determined. And she would face him, not as his daughter desperate for his approval, but as a woman who had made her own choices and was ready to face the consequences. Lily typed out a response, her fingers steady as she pressed the keys. I'm done with your plans, Dad. I'll see you in the morning. But I won't be doing things your way anymore. She sent the message and sat back, her heart thumping in her chest. Tomorrow, she would confront him. Tomorrow, she would stand firm in her decision, no matter what. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Lily's room, casting a soft glow across the bed. The tranquility of the morning was deceiving, masking the storm of emotions raging within her. She had sent the message to her father, bracing herself for what was to come. But now, as the hour drew closer to her meeting, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision she had made. Her father's office had always felt like a battlefield. His polished, executive persona was a mask, but underneath it, she knew all too well the control he wielded, the way he tried to shape everything around him to fit his vision. And today, she would be walking back into that fortress, ready to confront him. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. This was no longer just about her recovery. This was about her life, her future, and whether she would allow him to dictate every choice she made, or whether she would break free from the chains he had forged over the years. When she arrived at the office, the imposing glass building towered over her, a constant reminder of the power and influence her father had. As she walked through the automatic doors and into the lobby, the receptionist greeted her with a polite but distant smile. "Ms. Roberts, your father is expecting you," the receptionist said, her voice laced with a hint of discomfort. Lily couldn't help but wonder if the woman knew what kind of conversation was about to take place. Lily nodded, offering a tight smile before following the receptionist through the pristine hallway to her father's office. Her heart pounded with every step. The moment she had been dreading, the moment she had prepared for, was finally here. The door to his office stood open, and she could already hear his deep, commanding voice through the doorway. He was talking to someone on the phone, but when he saw her step into the room, his conversation abruptly ended. He placed the phone down with deliberate care and turned his attention to her. "Lily," he said, his tone cold, almost detached. "I assume you know why I've asked you to come here." Lily's pulse quickened, but she refused to let it show. She had come this far, there was no turning back now. "Yes, I know why I'm here," she replied, her voice steady. "You want to talk about your plans for me." Her father's lips tightened into a thin line. "It's not just my plan, Lily. It's your future. Everything I've done to give you the best chance at recovery and success. You can't expect to walk away from all of that without consequences." Lily stepped into the room, her gaze locking with his. "I didn't ask for your plans, Dad. I didn't ask for your money or your control. I just want to live my life on my own terms. I've worked too hard to let you make decisions for me again." Her father let out a frustrated sigh, his hands gripping the edge of his desk as if he was trying to keep himself composed. "You don't understand. Everything I've done for you. For your future. I've provided you with the best doctors, the best treatments. You think you can just walk away from that? You'll be nothing without me." Lily felt a spark of defiance ignite within her. She had spent so many years feeling small, like she was nothing without him. But now, in this moment, she realized how wrong he was. She wasn't nothing. She was everything she needed to be. "I'm not nothing," Lily said, her voice strong and unwavering. "I've made it this far on my own, and I will keep going. I'm not going to let you control me anymore. I've worked for this. I've fought for this." Her father's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening in anger. "You think you can just walk away from everything I've given you? You think you can make it on your own?" Lily stood her ground, not backing down. "I'm not walking away from anything. I'm stepping into my future. And you're not going to control it anymore." For a long moment, her father didn't speak. He simply watched her, his expression unreadable. Then, he leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. "I never thought you'd be this foolish," he muttered, almost to himself. "You'll regret this decision, Lily. You'll see. You can't escape me." Lily's heart ached at the realization that, no matter what she said or did, he would never see her as an equal, as someone who could stand on her own 2 feet. He would always see her as his possession, something to be shaped and molded. But Lily was done being molded. She was done being anyone's possession. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," Lily said, her voice clear and filled with finality. "And I'm not going to live in your shadow. I don't need your approval. I don't need your plans. I need my freedom." Her father stared at her for a long moment, his face hardening. Then, without another word, he stood up and walked to the door, opening it with a swift motion. "Leave," he said, his voice colder than she had ever heard it. "I don't want to see you again. You're on your own from here on out." Lily stood frozen in place for a moment, the weight of his words crashing over her. But then, something inside her shifted. She didn't need him anymore. She didn't need his approval. She was stronger than he gave her credit for, and she had everything she needed to build her own future. Without a word, she walked toward the door. Before she stepped out of the office, she turned to face him one last time. "Goodbye, Dad," she said, her voice steady and final. And with that, she walked out of the office, leaving the world she had known behind her. The drive home felt different now. There was no fear, no apprehension. There was only a deep sense of release, of liberation. Lily had done it. She had stood up to the man who had controlled her life for so long, and she had chosen her own path. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face it. Later that evening, Lily sat down with LeBron. He could see the change in her before she even said anything. The weight that had been holding her back was gone, replaced by a lightness he hadn't seen in her before. "I did it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. LeBron smiled, his eyes proud. "I knew you would." Lily smiled back, the weight of the decision still settling in but no longer feeling like a burden. It was her choice now. She was in control. And for the first time in a long time, she felt free. The weeks following her confrontation with her father were filled with uncertainty, but also something that Lily hadn't felt in a long time: hope. She had chosen her own path, for better or worse, and every step she took toward that path felt like a victory, even on the toughest days. Lily had moved out of her father's house, into a small apartment near the rehab center, a place where she could have space to think, to breathe. She knew it was going to be difficult, but she had to be on her own to truly reclaim her life. The apartment was nothing special, a simple one-bedroom with a small kitchen and a living room just big enough to fit a couch. But to her, it was a sanctuary. It was hers. She sat in the living room one evening, looking out the window at the street below. It was strange to be free, but it was also lonely. She hadn't anticipated the quiet that came with independence. Her phone sat on the table in front of her, a constant reminder of the people she had left behind. As much as she hated to admit it, there were times when she missed the connection she had with her father, even though it had been toxic. But she had made her choice, and there was no turning back now. She couldn't afford to look back, not when her future was still waiting to be built. At the rehab center, things had been progressing slowly but steadily. Lily's physical progress had plateaued, but she was more determined than ever. LeBron had been there every step of the way, pushing her when she needed it, encouraging her when she faltered. She had started focusing more on her mental recovery. She had learned that emotional and physical healing were intertwined. If she didn't learn to let go of the past, her body would never fully heal. And so, every session with LeBron became not just a physical workout but a mental one as well. They worked on building strength, not just in her legs, but in her mind. One day, during a particularly tough session, Lily found herself growing frustrated. She had been on the treadmill for what felt like hours, her muscles burning, her legs stiff and uncooperative. The progress she had made seemed to be slipping through her fingers, and she felt like giving up. "You've got this, Lily," LeBron said, his voice steady and calm. "I know it feels hard right now, but every step you take, no matter how small, is one step closer." Lily shook her head, struggling to catch her breath. "It doesn't feel like it's getting better. It feels like I'm stuck." LeBron adjusted the treadmill's speed, making it a little slower. "You're not stuck. This is just a tough day, and tough days are part of the journey. You've been through worse and come out stronger. I believe in you, and you should too." The words hit her harder than she expected. "I believe in you, and you should too." For so long, she had been fighting for other people's approval, other people's belief in her. But now, for the first time, LeBron was asking her to believe in herself. "I'm scared," Lily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I can't do this? What if this is the best I'll ever be?" LeBron stopped the treadmill and turned to face her. "Scared is okay, Lily. But you can't let fear control your decisions. The thing about fear is that it makes us see obstacles as mountains when really, they're just hills. You're stronger than you think. And I know that when you decide you're ready, you'll push past this. Lily felt something shift inside her. LeBron's words gave her a clarity she hadn't realized she was missing. She had been seeing her recovery as a mountain she had to climb, when in reality, it was a series of small hills, one after another. She didn't have to rush. There was no finish line she had to cross immediately. It was about progress, not perfection. The next day, Lily woke up early, determined to face the day with a new mindset. She had a plan. No more looking at the obstacles in front of her as insurmountable. She would take one step at a time. Slowly, methodically. And today, she was going to take control of her life. As she walked to the kitchen to make her breakfast, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her mother. Lily, I've been thinking a lot about you. I know things have been hard between us, but I want to try and make things right. I miss you. Can we talk? Lily stared at the message for a long moment. The conflict she had been carrying for years bubbled up to the surface. Her mother had always been the quiet force in her life, the one who had never pushed her too hard but had been there in the background, trying to protect her from the fallout of her father's control. Yet, in recent years, Lily had felt abandoned by her. But now, reading her mother's message, she felt something she hadn't expected, a twinge of hope. Maybe they could rebuild their relationship, but it wouldn't be on her father's terms. It had to be on her terms, just like everything else. Lily quickly typed a response, I'd like that. Let's talk. That afternoon, Lily met her mother at a nearby cafe. It was a neutral space, away from the weight of the house, away from the old life. Her mother was sitting at a small table near the window when Lily arrived, looking just as fragile as she remembered. Her mother had always worn her emotions on her sleeve, but today, she looked weary, like she had carried a heavy burden for too long. Lily took a seat across from her, her heart pounding. The last time they had really spoken, everything had felt so broken. Now, sitting in front of her mother, it felt like the pieces might finally fit together again, but it would take time. I'm sorry, her mother said, her voice soft but genuine. I should have stood up for you, Lily. I should have done more to protect you. Lily shook her head. It wasn't your fault, Mom. I know you tried. It was just hard. For both of us. Her mother reached across the table, taking her hand in hers. I was scared. I didn't know how to help you. I've always been afraid of losing you to your father's control. But I see now that you're stronger than I gave you credit for. Lily squeezed her mother's hand, feeling the weight of their shared history but also a glimmer of hope for the future. They could rebuild, piece by piece. It wouldn't be easy, but it was possible. I've been making decisions for myself, Lily said, her voice steady. It's hard, but I'm learning to stand on my own. And I want you to be a part of that. Her mother smiled, tears welling in her eyes. I'm proud of you, Lily. I'll be here, no matter what. I'm not going anywhere. Lily's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and gratitude. There was still a long road ahead, but with each conversation, with each choice, she was building something stronger, something unshakable. That night, as Lily lay in bed, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, peace. She didn't have all the answers, and she knew the road ahead would be tough. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was finally in control of her own future. She closed her eyes, thinking of the days to come, knowing that no matter what happened, she was ready. Lily's days had fallen into a new rhythm. She was no longer the girl who lived under the thumb of her father, trying to escape his expectations and her own fear. She was becoming someone else, someone stronger, and more determined than she had ever known herself to be. Every morning, she woke up and looked at the life she had created, a life that was hers, free from anyone else's influence. She had learned to walk again, though it wasn't easy. Each step felt like a small victory, but it was hers to claim. And she didn't need anyone's approval, especially not her father's. But there was still one thing that weighed heavily on her heart: LeBron. LeBron had become not just her physical therapist, but her confidant, her guide. His strength, his belief in her, had been the driving force behind her healing. He had given her the courage to step away from her father's grasp, to begin living life on her own terms. And in that process, something else had started to grow between them, a bond, deep and undeniable. But Lily wasn't sure where that bond was going. Was it friendship? Or something more? One evening, as they finished their last therapy session for the day, Lily caught LeBron's gaze. There was a quiet understanding between them, something that went beyond the work they'd done together. She could feel it, a connection that neither of them had dared acknowledge until now. LeBron, Lily began, her voice tentative, as she wiped the sweat from her forehead with a towel. I don't think I ever thanked you enough. LeBron leaned against the wall, his arms folded across his chest, as he watched her. His gaze was soft but intense, like he was waiting for her to continue. You've done more for me than anyone else ever has. You've helped me get my life back. I don't know how to repay you for that, she said, her voice thick with emotion. LeBron smiled, the warmth in his eyes undeniable. You don't need to repay me, Lily. I just want to see you happy. And it looks like you're on your way to that. Lily hesitated, biting her lip as she gathered her thoughts. I don't know what the future holds, but I want you to be a part of it. LeBron's expression softened, and he took a step toward her. I'm already part of your future, Lily. I'm right here, with you. Lily's heart skipped a beat at his words. She knew what he meant, but it still felt like there was something unspoken between them, something both of them were afraid to acknowledge. LeBron, I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Scared that if I let you in, if I let myself care about you, it'll just hurt in the end. LeBron walked toward her, closing the space between them. His presence was calming, reassuring, and for the first time in a long time, Lily felt safe. She knew, deep down, that she could trust him. I understand, he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. But sometimes, Lily, you have to let yourself be vulnerable. You can't live in fear of what might happen. Life is about taking chances. And if you're ready, I'm here. Whatever happens, we face it together. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, and she blinked them back quickly. She had spent so long guarding her heart, afraid to let anyone close. But with LeBron, it felt different. He wasn't like the others. He didn't want to control her or hold her back, he wanted to see her grow. Maybe I'm ready, she said, her voice trembling slightly. And then, without thinking, Lily took a step forward and wrapped her arms around him. LeBron froze for a moment before pulling her into a gentle embrace. The warmth of his touch, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, felt like a safe place for her, a place she hadn't known she needed until now. Thank you, she whispered into his chest. Thank you for everything. LeBron's arms tightened around her, and he murmured, You don't have to thank me, Lily. Just be happy. That's all I want for you. The days that followed were a blur of emotion, of growth. Lily's physical recovery continued, but so did her emotional journey. She had a newfound strength that came from within, a strength that was no longer dependent on anyone else's approval. She had learned to trust herself, to trust her own decisions, and to trust the people who had earned her trust. LeBron had earned that trust, and with every passing day, their bond deepened. They spent more time together outside of therapy, talking about everything and nothing. Lily learned about his life, his struggles, and his dreams. And in turn, she shared more of herself than she ever thought she could. She was no longer the fragile girl who had been broken by her father's control. She was a woman who had chosen her own path, and who was learning to walk it with someone who believed in her. One evening, as they sat on the steps of her apartment building, watching the sun dip below the horizon, LeBron turned to her, his face serious for the first time in a while. Lily, he said, his voice low, I know we've both been through a lot. And I know it hasn't been easy for you to open up to anyone, let alone me. But I need you to know something, whatever happens, you're not alone. I'm here. And I'll always be here. Lily looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. She had never had anyone say those words to her, at least not in a way that made her believe them. But with LeBron, she knew they were true. He wasn't just saying it, he meant it. I know, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. And I'm ready to let you in, LeBron. I'm ready to take that step. And with that, Lily felt the last of her fears slip away. The future was uncertain, and the road ahead would undoubtedly be difficult. But for the first time in her life, she was no longer afraid to walk it, especially not with LeBron by her side. The next morning, Lily received a phone call from her mother. The connection between them had been growing stronger, and Lily could hear the pride in her mother's voice as they spoke. I'm so proud of you, Lily, her mother said. You've come so far. I can see the woman you've become, and I'm so proud. Lily smiled, her heart full of gratitude. Thank you, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you. Later that afternoon, as she and LeBron sat in her apartment, the world outside buzzing with the noise of everyday life, Lily realized something important: she was ready. She was ready for whatever came next. She had fought for her independence, for her life, and for the future she now held in her hands. And she wasn't going to let anyone take it away from her, not her father, not anyone. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?